these are the three funds that have been created under the Constitution: the Consolidated Fund, the Contingency Fund, as well as the Public Accounts of India. Now, what is this? The Consolidated Fund of India. All money which comes in the form of taxes or any expenditure which the government of India takes up, or any loan which is raised by the government of India, all of it gets credited where? It gets credited to the Consolidated Fund of India. In fact, even non-taxable revenue, non-tax revenue, like if we talk about non-tax revenue, like revenue from public undertakings, revenue from public undertakings in the form of, railway revenue or anything like that, it also gets credited where? It also gets credited to the Consolidated Fund of India. This is the reason why I'm saying that this is the main fund of the government of India. Every tax that is raised by the government is, the money that is raised will get credited to the Consolidated Fund of it. All the expenditures that we have just talked about in the form of budget, all the expenditures that are taken up, they are taken from the Consolidated Fund of India. All loan which the government of India raises. So if the government wants loan and it raises loan worth, suppose, $100 million from World Bank to finance any specific policy or program of the government, what happens? The money gets credited where? The money gets credited in the Consolidated Fund of India. Okay. Even when it comes to some non-taxable non-tax revenues like income of public undertakings and all of it, it gets credited to the Consolidated Fund of India. That is the reason why I said it is the main fund of the government of India. Okay. However, this fund is operated by legislative action. This fund is operated by legislative action. This is operated by legislative action, which means any money that has to be, either credited or debited, primarily the money that has to be debited from the Consolidated Fund of India, only the Parliament can authorize that. Only the Parliament can legally authorize expenditure from the Consolidated Fund of India. Only the Parliament can do that. Clear? Now, next comes Contingency Fund. What does the name suggest? Contingency. What does that mean? It's an emergency fund. Okay. Contingency means an emergency. Okay. So what is it? Contingency fund. The Constitution empowers the Parliament to, by a law, create a contingency fund. To create a contingency fund. Clear? This is basically what the contingency fund is. It is not created by the constitution. It is not created by the constitution. Read the language. The language is so important here. What does the language say? The constitution empowers the parliament to by law create a contingency fund, which means it is not a constitutional fund. Unlike the Consolidated Fund of India, which is created by the constitution itself, and hence it's a constitutional fund, this is not a constitutional fund. The constitution empowers the parliament to by a law create a contingency fund, which means it is a statutory, a legal fund that is created. Okay, and accordingly the parliament has passed Contingency Fund of India. Contingency Fund of India. Contingency Fund of India Act 1950, and in 1951 this fund was created. This fund, that is contingency fund, is at the disposal of the President of India. It is at the disposal of the President, which means the President authorizes expenditure. The President authorizes expenditure from the fund. The President authorizes expenditure from the fund subject to approval of the Parliament. Subject to approval of the Parliament. So the President authorizes expenditure. The President authorizes expenditure. Suppose the President of India is on a visit to a particular place where there is a disaster that has happened. So in that case, if the President feels the need, then the President can authorize certain expenditure from the contingency fund. Okay? That is what the contingency fund is. Now comes public accounts. In public accounts, you will find that here expenditures like judicial deposits, saving deposits that are there, provident fund deposit, such deposits that are there, they are submitted to the public accounts of India. And how is this operated? So it is operated through executive action. So for here, there is no approval of the legislature required. Okay? There is no approval of the legislature required. This is basically what the public accounts of India is. Okay? So these are the three different funds that are created. And the same is true for even the states. So state also has a consolidated fund. State also can create a contingency fund. It is not mandatory. Okay? And most of the states have not created a contingency fund. Why? Because in India, for the states, you will find there is something called as disasters. For disasters, there are something called as the Disaster Management Act, and that act authorizes creation of a fund called as Disaster Management Fund. Okay, so any kind of disasters that are there, that happens, the money that is allocated, it is allocated from this disaster management fund. Okay, so most of the states have not created this. Okay, and then comes public accounts. It is also the case for the states. So those money which comes to the states in the form of these kind of deposits that are there, they are submitted in the what? Public accounts of the state.